You see these? These are my merch. I made a European spreadshirt shop because apparently you have to do that manually, and now you can get this and a lot of other things with my designs, which are these two at the current time. Also in Europe. You could also get them before in Europe, but you had to ship them from America. So if you want some of these really cool wares, go ahead and Jake Paul that merch. It seems like no industry is safe from those filthy millennials. It seems like all they do all day is sit in a Starbucks and make plans as to how ruin the industries of hard-working CEOs exploiting minimum wage workers. And the worst thing is, they're not even talking to each other during these conversations because everything they say over the Twitters. This is what I imagine happens in the brains of a lot of boomers. Like, here's my favorite thing that I've actually unironically seen boomers complain about. So when you thank a person for something that they did for you, a boomer will usually say, "You're welcome." Well, millennials are more in the habit of saying, "No problem." Well, no problem my ass, because a problem is apparently exactly what this is. And I'll tell you why this whole situation is the case in the first place. If you help someone with like a minor inconvenience or really anything, and they say thank you, and you go, "You're welcome," what you're saying is, "You're damn fucking right that I helped you overcome this really just small thing. A whole second of my time was wasted helping you, so you better be grateful." Whereas if you say "no problem," it's more along the lines of, "Yeah, of course. Like, I appreciate that you thank me, but there's no reason for this. I just like helping my fellow human being." But yeah, millennials are the me generation. After we have started out this whole video with a tangent, let's actually get into the meat of things and talk about all the industries, well, some of the industries, because really all industries count into this if you ask some people, that millennials are murdering in cold blood, and maybe think about why we might be doing that. Also, after that, we will look at some industries that millennials are actually saving or even reviving, so we can end on a positive note. Let's start out with my favorite, napkins. Yes, apparently millennials are ruining the napkin industry. How? Well, instead of buying wasteful and expensive napkins whose really only use is to be at the dinner table, often not even to be used at the dinner table because they're way too fancy for that, we prefer the cheaper and more multi-purpose paper towels. But why could this be? I wonder if it actually is because napkins are just a vanity-infused status symbol that if you have any kind of frugality in your life or a scarcity of, money, is not something that you will be spending money on. In the evolutionary game of the free market, the napkin and the paper towel occupy the same niche. It's just that the paper towel is objectively superior and also costs less. Speaking about napkins, let's talk about mid-range restaurants, especially those of the chain variety. Millennials just don't really go to Applebee's and TGI Fridays and the Olive Garden. Now granted, I do live in Germany and we just don't have any of those here, but if we did, I will explain to you why I wouldn't go there. I do not go eating out as a status symbol. I go eating out because I didn't have the time to cook today, or because I want to eat really good food. If I didn't have time to cook today, I can just go to the kebab shop around the corner, or Burger King or some shit. And then it's cheap food. There's no reason for a fancy dinner. And if I do go out to eat good food, I'm not gonna go to some cookie cutter mid-range bollocks restaurant. My money is way too valuable for that. I am even willing to spend more on going to a fancier restaurant. Instead of going to Applebee's once every month, I would much rather go to an actual fancy place 2 or 3 times a year. When I go out to eat, I don't want something that I can get just anywhere in the country or possibly anywhere in the world. I want something unique with dishes prepared by a chef who actually gives a shit and preferably is also the owner of the small business that is his restaurant. It is at this point well known that millennials prefer to invest money in experiences rather than material goods. If you go to Applebee's every month, it's just not an experience. It's always the same experience which your brain clusters up as just one experience. So it's a complete waste of money. Plus, I cannot iterate this enough, I really prefer spending money at a middle-class business than some mega corporation. Let's talk about motorcycles. Now, personally, I have veophobia, which means that I am deathly afraid of driving ground vehicles. And it's really just ground vehicles, like air vehicles and boats, they're alright. But even if I didn't have veophobia, I wouldn't buy a fucking motorcycle. I can't even afford a car. I'm not gonna buy a secondary vehicle with less functionality that is also more dangerous. Is riding motorcycles fun? Probably, for a lot of people, definitely for a lot of people. But it's just way too expensive a hobby for me to actually be paying any money for it unless I know that I am extremely serious about it. Hey, here's a business idea that I will give you completely free of charge. Rent motorcycles to millennials for joyrides. It's exactly the kind of thing that they would get because it's an experience and it doesn't put the cost of owning a fucking motorcycle on them that they're gonna ride 3 times and then put away in the garage because they have kids and it's way too dangerous. But the whole motorcycle thing is an excellent segue into our next industry that millennials are ruining, namely fossil fuels, and especially big oil. It appears as though millennials are willing to spend more money on energy that comes from renewable resources. And this is true for electric vehicles, but also just the power that comes out of the socket in your home. I know I pay more per kilowatt hour to my electric company because I have this special thing that only makes it so my energy comes from green renewable sources. But that's a stupid decision, isn't it? That's a really dumb short-term decision. That's a terrible decision. This is why millennials can't buy houses. I mean, you could save money on this. Just go for fossil fuels. Save money. But you know, maybe this is because I will actually still be alive in 50 years when climate change caused by you burning fossil fuels will be ravaging the planet and everyone who lives in it, including me. Maybe I would rather not choke to death in a runaway methane greenhouse than save $10 on the electricity bill every month. But that's just me. And I'm also not gonna get a job in the fossil fuel industry because the fossil fuel industry will soon die. Speaking of the environment, let's talk fireworks. I, for one, would only ever have bought fireworks for one occasion every year, and that's New Year's Eve. I know you Americans also do it on the 4th of July, though I'm not sure if you also do it on New Year's Eve, so you would do both. I don't know about you, but personally, I would rather spend time with friends on New Year's Eve instead of, you know, killing tens of thousands of birds and pumping like 3 months worth of driving in terms of fine particulates into the atmosphere, while also freezing my ass off just to watch some colorful explosions for 10 minutes. But I sure as shit am not gonna be spending that time with friends in my own house. First of all, I'm not gonna straddle myself with an extra huge amount of debt so I can get a starter home. That shit serves no purpose. It would be much cheaper and much more effective to just rent. It'll only accumulate costs down the line, and probably I won't be able to sell it for as much as I bought it. And the vast majority of millennials will never be able to afford their own house, considering the enormous costs they have been driven to, and most people who will get houses that are millennials will inherit them from their parents. All these fucking land-owning boomers bought their shitty houses, then drove up the price of land, the price of real estate, and now they expect to sell those houses for much more than they were initially worth, and really much more than they are worth now, to a base of buyers that just doesn't have the money to afford these insanely expensive houses. I'd rather fucking rent, if only because it gives me the freedom to move whenever I need to. Like many millennials, I live with the realization that jobs will not just come to me. I will have to go to where the jobs are. And I cannot do that if I have a house. And because millennials live in an economy where there is absolutely no job security anymore, they will have to move a lot because they will have to go to different firms to stay on their same career path, or have to switch career paths entirely from one day to the next. We're adapting to the market. And if you do have a house, hold on to that shit. Who knows what's gonna happen in the future? Next up, diamonds. Apparently, millennials are not buying diamonds as much as previous generations. Aside from the obvious this is some bullshit status symbol luxury that we simply cannot afford, there are a million reasons not to buy diamonds. We know that they're way more expensive than they ought to be because the price is not set by the free market, but by an international diamond cartel that is allowed to just do whatever it wants because it holds a monopoly over diamonds. We also know that diamond rings weren't even a thing that was considered valuable until early last century, where that precise same diamond cartel paid massive sums of money to huge advertisement agencies, which then devised campaign strategies to make this tiny piece of carbon look like it's the most valuable thing in the world to people who don't know any better. We also don't appreciate the environmental impact that diamonds have, and also the whole exploiting and murdering of Africans is kind of a bummer. Diamonds belong in science and industry, not in your jewelry case. Speaking of wedding rings, millennials are ruining marriage also. Not only do we get married less and later in life, those of us who do also prefer not to throw gargantuan amounts of money into the maw of the marriage industry. Seriously, the wedding industry is some of the most psychopathic shit on the planet. They are master manipulators who will overcharge you for everything and they will talk you into everything. Hey, if you don't get those Dolce & Gabbana completely white plain tablecloths instead of the white tablecloths that you found on Amazon, even though they're exactly the same, your perfect day will be ruined. I guarantee that. I am an expert. I am a marriage planner. If you're not willing to put down at least $100,000 for this single event, your marriage is doomed because you factually do not love each other. I know this. I'm a marriage planner. I have seen this happen. They have, after all, spent millions of dollars drilling this into the brains of little girls that they will have their perfect princess wedding in the magic castle with the white horses and the dress that costs unfathomable amounts of money and which they will wear once. A lot of millennials marry for the tax benefits only because they don't see the institution of marriage as something sacred. And if you marry for the tax benefits, you're not going to throw yourself into a whole mountain range's worth of debt, because that's a very stupid financial decision. This is why more and more millennials prefer a small ceremony with close friends and family, because those are the people that actually matter. But you know where you can buy wedding dresses? Department stores. And millennials are killing those too. And boy, it's very bad. Just this week, Sears had to close its doors, and it didn't even have the money left to give severance packages to its workers. Well, you know, aside from the CEOs, of course, which received 25 million. It seems like millennials are preferring to spend more money on clothes in more exclusive and smaller boutiques and brand places. Because, you know, the stupid millennials, they're so vain, they just need expensive clothes. What people who say this kind of shit usually omit is that we will just also buy fewer clothes than previous generations, because what we value is quality. I would rather own one really nice, high-quality, expensive item than 5 mid-range items, because I do not believe that owning more items makes you a better and more successful person. I do not buy garbage because garbage either serves no purpose or will break sooner than the proper stuff. Yes, it is true that I spent 100 euros on this pair of shoes. I spent those 100 euros 2 years ago, and I expect not to be spending any more euros on pairs of shoes for at least 2 more years, if not longer. Another thing that boomers accuse millennials of ruining is golf. Turns out that incredibly expensive membership fees in your country clubs, stupid dress codes that force you to dress up like a fucking clown, and a general reputation for pointless hoity-toityness do not sell very well among our generation. Also, golf sucks! But you know what people in golf clubs like to talk about? Their expensive vacations. As it turns out, millennials do not go on extremely expensive, all-inclusive vacations. The two obvious reasons are because we do not have the time, we need to spend that time working so we can live at the bare minimum of existence, and also because we do not have the money, because the time we spend working is not adequately compensated. But even when millennials do go on vacation, they prefer not to go to these huge, all-expenses-paid resorts. Because when you're in one, it doesn't make a difference if it's in Greece, in Italy, on the Bahamas, or in fucking Indonesia. They're all the same, and it's ruining small businesses in these touristy areas. The profits from tourism in these areas, which very often is the only thing that they get from the global economy, is limited to a very small elite of wealthy hotel owners, and they will do everything in their power to prevent their guests from leaving the premises. Just me personally, I like to actually experience the place where I go to vacation. I would like to see the culture of the thing. Much like millennials are more interested in experiences than material goods, we are also more interested in the cultural repertoire of a vacationing spot than just the beaches. So we're much more likely to spend money at your museums, your old rocks, and your restaurants than previous generations. So that was just a small selection of industries that millennials are apparently ruining. And mostly these boil down to pay inflated prices for our obsolete industries. Well, if I had a little bit of income, maybe I could— No income! Just pay! And the thing is, you used to have to buy all the useless, expensive crap because if you don't have the status symbol, you're not considered to be a fucking successful person by your generational peers. Millennials just aren't ashamed of being poor. We know it's not our fault. All we can do is work hard to get some enjoyment out of life, to maybe get a little slice of the pie, because that's the best we're ever gonna fucking get. And if that means cutting back on useless vanity purchases in the mid-price range, then that's what we're gonna do. But I did promise some positivity, so here are some industries that millennials are actually saving. So number one are radio shows. I'm not talking radio shows that are on the airways, that's way too inconvenient. I'm talking podcasts. Nowadays, everyone, not just wealthy people with broadcasting licenses, can make really excellent radio show content. And there's a lot of it out there. Fucking millennials with their short attention spans, watching 3-hour conversations on the Joe Rogan Experience. Because literally that's what that is. Like, one of the most successful podcasts in the entire world is just 2 and sometimes more people talking for 2.5 to 3 hours. There's no fancy editing, there's no boiling down, there's no fucking cuts between, oh, and now we have this action with fucking infographic. No, it's just 2 people talking. The thing that keeps us with our goldfish attention spans hooked is that it's actually fucking interesting and not the bullshit empty drivel that legacy media continually produces. You know how all that millennials do all day, every day is just play video games? As evidenced by the fact that we currently live in the golden age of board games. New excellent board games are coming out every single fucking day, it seems. And we are gobbling them up like hungry, hungry hippos. These games are more complex, they're more innovative, they're more versatile, they're just of higher quality than ever before. Which is not to say we don't also play the classics. This whole operation is a joint effort with Generation X, who did a lot of work in legitimizing board games and especially tabletop RPGs and also war games as entertainment media. And it's really not surprising, because a board game is really just a whole box full of experiences. You play them while spending time with the people you care most about in the world, and every single session can be a potential treasure trove of good memories. Unfortunately, I don't own a lot of board games on account of being poor as shit, but if I had the money, I would probably buy more of them. You know what's also an experience? Concerts. The music moguls always complain that fucking album sales are down and all of the piracy that goes on, and how will these record company executives afford their 7th luxury yacht? Well, it turns out that not only are millennials more prone to supporting individual artists directly, especially if they're small artists, but we're also more prone to going to concerts. I don't know a single millennial that doesn't listen to music every single day, and we can listen to all of our favorite songs at any time. but to actually see our favorite musicians in the flesh and be around fellow fans, that's an experience. This is why we go to concerts more than previous generations. Not only are they something that is actually legitimately special, but they also support the artists way more than album sales would. And if there's one thing that millennials love to do, it's giving money to people who actually deserve it. This is why, though we are the poorest generation, we are also the most charitable generation, because we care about the people around us and the people on the other side of the world, and we care about properly rewarding hard work. Thank you very much for watching this video. I just felt like I needed to do a new Millennials video after a while, and this is something that I've been seeing a lot of in these past few weeks, and it irritates me because it speaks of complete ignorance. Consider supporting me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, do all of the things with the video that you would do, subscribe to my channel. In that spirit, get some experiences that you would enjoy getting, do something that you like. Don't waste money on stupid material things unless they're actually really good stupid material things, that you want those material things. And see you around, cunts.